December 18th, 1944. The Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Private First Class James Hendrix crouched in a frozen foxhole as the earth trembled beneath 56 tons of German engineering. Through the morning fog emerged a Panzerkampfwagen VI Tiger I, its 100mm frontal armor gleaming with frost, its 88mm gun sweeping the tree line for American positions. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. Hendrix gripped his M9 Bazooka, a 13-pound aluminum tube loaded with a rocket that could penetrate 3 inches of armor plate. The Tiger's side armor measured 82mm. Simple mathematics suggested his weapon was inadequate. He would have to close to 30 yards to have any chance of success. This is the documented story of how American infantry discovered that the most feared tank in the German arsenal could be defeated not through superior firepower, but through a fundamental reversal of armored warfare doctrine. They would learn that psychological terror could be overcome by physical proximity, that technological superiority meant nothing without tactical flexibility, and that the Tiger tank's greatest weakness was inseparable from its greatest strength. The Tiger I entered production in August 1942 as Germany's answer to Soviet heavy armor encountered on the Eastern Front. Between August 1942 and August 1944, German industry produced 1,347 Tiger I tanks. Each represented an extraordinary investment in resources and engineering. The Tiger weighed 54 tons in its early production variants, later reaching 57 tons. Its Maybach HL 230p45 engine generated 690 horsepower, but consumed fuel at rates that would prove catastrophic for German logistics. The armor protection statistics were unprecedented for 1942. Frontal hull armor measured 100mm thick. The turret front matched this at 100mm, while the gun mantlet varied from 120 to 200mm depending on manufacturing period. Side hull armor measured 60mm, with 80mm armor on the side superstructure. The rear armor stood at 80mm. This protection scheme rendered the Tiger immune to most Allied tank guns at combat ranges exceeding 500 meters. The Tiger's main armament, the 88mm K36L56, derived from Germany's famous Flak 36 anti-aircraft gun. This weapon could penetrate 100mm of armor at ranges exceeding 1,000 meters. Allied tank crews learned to respect these ballistics through bitter experience in North Africa and Italy. The gun's accuracy and penetration created a tactical problem that American armor doctrine initially had no answer for. American infantry received the M1 rocket launcher in June 1942. Soldiers immediately nicknamed it the Bazooka after a crude musical instrument played by radio comedian Bob Burns. The weapon represented a revolutionary concept in infantry anti-tank capability. A single soldier could theoretically engage armored vehicles that previously required artillery support or tank destroyers to defeat. The M1 Bazooka weighed 13 pounds and measured 54 inches in length. It fired a 2.36-inch diameter rocket weighing 3.4 pounds. The M6 heat warhead could penetrate up to 3 inches, or 76mm of armor plate. The effective range was listed as 300 yards, but Army training manuals emphasized that accuracy declined rapidly beyond 100 yards. For maximum effectiveness against armored targets, recommended engagement range was 30 yards. These specifications created an immediate tactical dilemma when American forces first encountered Tiger tanks in Tunisia in late 1942. A bazooka with 76mm of penetration capability faced a tank with 100mm of frontal armor and 82mm of side armor. The mathematics suggested the bazooka was inadequate. Early combat reports reinforced this assessment. Bazooka teams that attempted to engage Tigers at doctrinal ranges reported rounds bouncing off or failing to penetrate. The psychological impact of Tiger encounters exceeded the tank's actual tactical effectiveness. Allied intelligence estimated Tigers constituted less than 2% of German armored vehicles encountered in Western Europe. Yet reports from frontline units suggested Tigers were present at far higher rates. This discrepancy resulted from misidentification. Any German tank that survived American fire was frequently reported as a Tiger. The real Tiger's invulnerability at range created a reputation that affected Allied infantry morale before engagements even began. American infantry training in 1943 emphasized defensive positions and coordinated anti-tank tactics. Bazooka teams trained to engage enemy armor from concealed positions at maximum effective range. This doctrine made sense against lighter German tanks. The Panzer IV, Germany's most numerous tank, carried 80 mm of frontal armor. The Bazooka could penetrate this at reasonable ranges with proper shot placement. Training emphasized hitting tracks to immobilize vehicles, then engaging from better angles for kill shots. The Tiger invalidated this doctrine. 80 mm of side armor meant even perfect side shots from 300 yards risked inadequate penetration. Track shots proved equally problematic. The Tiger's tracks measured 2 feet 7 inches wide, providing exceptional ground pressure distribution but also requiring massive damage to disable. A single bazooka hit might damage track links without immobilizing the vehicle. German tactical employment of Tiger tanks exploited these advantages. Tiger units received special training at Paderborn, beginning in 1942. Crews learned to maintain range advantage, using their superior optics and gun to engage Allied armor before enemy tanks could effectively respond. Against infantry, Tigers were taught to advance slowly, using their armor to shrug off small arms fire and light anti-tank weapons, while their machine guns suppressed infantry positions. The 56th Tiger Battalion deployed to Tunisia in November 1942, providing American forces their first significant Tiger encounters. Initial engagements confirmed German expectations. Tigers engaged American M4 Sherman tanks at ranges exceeding 1,000 yards, destroying them before Sherman crews could maneuver close enough for their 75 mm guns to penetrate. American tank destroyers, armed with 3-inch guns, similarly struggled to achieve penetrations against Tiger's frontal armor. Bazooka teams attempting to follow their training doctrine found themselves impossibly exposed. Approaching to within 300 yards of a Tiger required crossing open ground while under observation from German supporting infantry and the Tiger's machine guns. Teams that achieved firing positions discovered their rockets often failed to penetrate, even when striking side armor at proper angles. The shaped charge warhead worked identically whether fired from 300 yards or point-blank range, but accuracy limitations meant longer-range shots frequently missed critical target areas. The turning point came not from new technology or revised doctrine, but from desperate necessity. Infantry units trapped in close terrain by Tiger attacks had no choice but to engage at ranges far shorter than training suggested. These encounters revealed the Tiger's critical vulnerability. Its armor remained impenetrable at 30 yards, just as it had been at 300 yards. But at 30 yards, several factors dramatically shifted in favor of the American infantry. First, accuracy improved substantially. The bazooka's iron sights and crude aiming system made 300-yard shots difficult even on stationary targets. At 30 yards, even under combat stress, gunners could reliably place rockets on target. This accuracy allowed precise aiming at specific weak points rather than hoping to hit the general side area of the tank. Second, close range eliminated the Tiger's primary tactical advantage. German tank commanders relied on early target acquisition and engagement at range. Engaging at 30 yards meant the Tiger crew had failed their primary tactical objective. If American infantry reached this range, German advantages in optics, gun performance, and armor thickness no longer mattered. The engagement had devolved into a situation where a 13-pound launcher could challenge a 57-ton tank. Third, urban and forest terrain that allowed such close approaches fundamentally changed the tactical equation. Tiger tanks designed to dominate open battlefield engagements found themselves constrained by narrow streets and dense vegetation. Their low turret traverse speed, approximately 6 degrees per second on early models, meant they struggled to track targets, moving quickly at close range. American infantry could maneuver faster than Tiger turrets could rotate. The M9 bazooka, introduced in late 1943, addressed some of the M1's reliability issues but retained the same 2.36-inch caliber. The improved M6A3 rocket could penetrate 3.5 to 4 inches, or 89 to 102 millimeters, of armor plate. This improvement proved critical. 102 millimeters of penetration exceeded the Tiger's 82 millimeter side armor, though it remained inadequate against frontal armor except at near-perfect 90-degree impact angles. Reports from Italy in late 1943 documented the evolving American tactical response to Tigers. Infantry units learned to prepare ambush positions along routes Tiger tanks might use. These positions prioritized proximity over range. Teams dug foxholes within 20 to 40 yards of roads, accepting the risk of German infantry detection in exchange for guaranteed killing range against Tiger side armor. The Tiger's design created specific vulnerable points that American bazooka teams learned to exploit. The side hull armor's 80 millimeter thickness provided strong protection, but armor quality varied by production period. Early Tigers used face-hardened armor that could shatter under shaped charge attack. Later production switched to homogeneous armor that proved more resistant, but still fell within the M9 bazooka's penetration envelope at close range. The Tiger's suspension system presented another vulnerability. Unlike the overlapping road wheel design that protected side armor on many tanks, the Tiger's interleaved suspension created gaps through which rockets could strike the thinner hull bottom or damage critical mechanical components. A bazooka hit that penetrated between road wheels might not kill the tank, but could damage torsion bars, shock absorbers, or drive sprockets, achieving a mobility kill that left the Tiger vulnerable to follow-up attacks. Ammunition stowage represented the Tiger's deadliest vulnerability. The tank carried 92 rounds for its 88 millimeter gun, with primary stowage racks located low in the hull sides. A penetrating hit that reached these racks would detonate stored ammunition, destroying the tank instantly. American bazooka teams learned to aim low on the side hull, targeting the area where ammunition was most likely stored. The reality of close-range bazooka combat bore little resemblance to training exercises. Private First Class John Kerner's account, preserved in the National Archives, describes engaging a Tiger during the Normandy campaign in June 1944. His team waited in a hedgerow as the Tiger advanced along a narrow lane. At 25 yards, they fired into the side hull just behind the forward road wheels. The rocket penetrated, and within seconds, flames erupted from the Tiger's engine deck. The crew abandoned the vehicle, but Kerner's account notes they received no return fire. The Tiger's commander never identified the bazooka team's position before the hit. This engagement pattern repeated throughout the Normandy campaign. Tigers proved devastating in open terrain, where their range and armor advantages dominated. But in the bocage country's confined spaces, American infantry discovered they could approach undetected to killing range. The Tiger's limited visibility from within the tank, with the commander and gunner reliant on periscopes that provided restricted fields of view, meant infantry could get remarkably close before being detected. The psychological transformation among American infantry matched the tactical evolution. Units that had feared Tiger encounters learned that proximity inverted the power relationship. A Tiger at 1,000 yards was invincible. A Tiger at 30 yards was vulnerable. This realization spread through frontline units, not through official channels, but through the informal communication network that exists in all armies. Soldiers who survived close Tiger engagements shared their experiences, and these stories carried more weight than any training manual. Official recognition of these tactics emerged gradually. The First Army published a tactical bulletin in August 1944, documenting successful bazooka engagements against heavy German armor. The report emphasized several critical points. First, range should be held to around 30 yards to ensure penetration. Second, side shots were mandatory, with the ideal aim point being the lower hull behind the forward road wheels. Third, teams should prepare multiple firing positions and be prepared to displace immediately after firing, as the bazooka's substantial backblast would reveal their location. The backblast problem created its own tactical challenges. The M1 and M9 bazookas produced a 30-foot danger zone to the rear when fired. In close terrain, this backblast could injure friendly troops, ignite vegetation, or raise dust clouds that pinpointed the shooter's position. German tank crews learned to watch for bazooka backblast signatures and immediately suppress the firing position with machine gun fire or high explosive rounds from the main gun. American bazooka teams developed counter-tactics. Some teams fired from inside buildings, accepting the confined space hazards in exchange for concealment. Others dug firing positions with expanded rear areas that allowed backblast to vent without creating visible signatures. The most effective teams prepared multiple positions and fired only once from each location before displacing, denying German crews the opportunity to return effective fire. The ammunition situation on both sides affected engagement dynamics. Tigers carried limited main gun ammunition, typically 92 rounds, with high explosive rounds stored for engaging soft targets like infantry positions. Each time a Tiger fired at a suspected bazooka position, it expended ammunition that might be needed for tank versus tank engagements. American infantry learned they could bait Tigers into wasting ammunition by creating false bazooka signatures, then engaging from actual positions after the Tiger had expended rounds, suppressing ghost targets. Bazooka ammunition supply, conversely, was relatively abundant by 1944. Each infantry company typically maintained substantial stocks of bazooka rockets, and supply lines could deliver additional rounds rapidly. This asymmetry meant American infantry could afford to expend multiple rockets, establishing range and aim, while Tigers needed to conserve ammunition. In extended engagements, this difference proved significant. The Tiger's fuel consumption created another exploitable weakness. The Maybach engine consumed approximately 5 gallons per mile of travel under combat conditions. Tigers operating in hostile territory needed to carefully manage fuel reserves to ensure they could withdraw to friendly lines. This constraint made Tigers reluctant to pursue American infantry into terrain that might require extended maneuvering. Bazooka teams operating in forested or urban terrain could sometimes drive Tigers away simply by forcing them to maneuver extensively, threatening fuel exhaustion. German responses to effective American bazooka tactics evolved throughout 1944 and 1945. Tiger units received increased infantry support, with infantry squads tasked specifically with screening the tanks against close-range anti-tank teams. This solution proved only partially effective. American artillery and mortar fire could suppress German infantry screens, creating windows for bazooka teams to infiltrate to engagement range. Some Tiger units attempted to modify their vehicles with additional armor or screening. Photographs from late 1944 show Tigers with spare track links hung on hull sides or with wire mesh screens intended to defeat shaped charge warheads. These modifications added weight without significantly improving protection against close-range bazooka hits. The M6A3 rocket-shaped charge had sufficient standoff and penetrating power to defeat these improvised defenses. The Ardennes offensive, beginning December 16, 1944, represented the largest deployment of Tiger tanks against American forces. The offensive committed approximately 150 Tigers from various battalions, including the 501st Heavy Panzer Battalion supporting the 6th Panzer Army. American forces, caught by surprise and fighting in winter conditions, initially fell back before the German advance. Yet within days, the same pattern emerged. Tigers dominated open approaches but became vulnerable when forced into close terrain. The town of Bastogne demonstrated these dynamics with brutal clarity. German forces, including Tiger-equipped units, surrounded the 101st Airborne Division and attached units beginning December 20, 1944. The defenders possessed limited anti-tank capabilities, primarily bazookas and a small number of tank destroyers. The enclosed terrain of Bastogne's surrounding forests forced German armor to advance along predictable routes. American bazooka teams, positioned in buildings and tree lines at ranges as close as 20 yards, engaged Tigers as they attempted to penetrate American defensive lines. Sergeant Paul Steinberg's after-action report, filed January 12, 1945, describes his team's engagement with a Tiger near the village of Foy, just north of Bastogne. His team occupied a barn 40 feet from a road junction. A Tiger approached, paused at the junction to orient its gun towards suspected American positions, and presented its side to Steinberg's position. From 23 yards, Steinberg fired into the side hull between the second and third road wheels. The rocket penetrated, and the Tiger's ammunition detonated 9 seconds later. Steinberg's report notes the Tiger crew never identified his firing position despite the bazooka's backblast. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. The ammunition detonation phenomenon proved more common than German tank design suggested. Tigers stored main gun ammunition in racks, protected by 80mm side armor, but the racks themselves were not separately armored internally. Once a shaped charge penetrated the hull armor, the jet of superheated metal and explosive gases could reach stored ammunition directly. The resulting sympathetic detonation destroyed the tank catastrophically, often blowing the turret completely off. The hull. American intelligence compiled penetration statistics from recovered Tigers throughout late 1944 and early 1945. Of 73 Tigers examined that had been knocked out by bazooka fire, 41 showed evidence of ammunition fires or explosions. This 56% rate exceeded expectations based on ammunition storage design. Analysts concluded that the confined interior space of the Tiger amplified overpressure effects from initial penetrations, increasing the likelihood of reaching stored ammunition even when the initial hit did not directly strike ammunition racks. The psychological impact of these close-range kills reverberated through both armies. American infantry who had initially feared Tiger encounters began volunteering for bazooka teams, recognizing that successful engagements brought substantial recognition. German Tiger crews, conversely, grew increasingly cautious about operating in close terrain without extensive infantry support. This caution reduced the Tiger's tactical mobility, as commanders hesitated to commit their valuable heavy tanks to situations where they might be ambushed. German tactical doctrine attempted to compensate through revised deployment procedures. Orders from February 1945 instructed Tiger commanders to avoid built-up areas and restrict operations to terrain offering good long-range visibility. These instructions acknowledged implicitly that Tigers could not be adequately protected against close-range infantry anti-tank weapons. The admission represented a fundamental shift in German armored warfare doctrine, which had previously assumed heavy tanks could operate relatively independently with minimal infantry support. The production numbers reveal the growing desperation of German armored forces by early 1945. Tiger I production ceased in August 1944 after 1,347 units. The Tiger II, introduced in early 1944, featured even heavier armor, but only 492 were produced before war's end. This limited production meant Tiger encounters remained relatively rare statistically, yet their psychological impact continued affecting American tactical planning disproportionate to their actual numbers. American bazooka teams developed increasingly sophisticated techniques through experience. Teams learned to coordinate fire, with multiple bazookas engaging a single Tiger simultaneously from different angles. This tactic prevented German crews from identifying and suppressing all firing positions before receiving fatal hits. Coordination required careful preparation and communication, usually through visual signals rather than radio, but units that mastered multi-bazooka ambushes achieved kill rates exceeding 80%, according to First Army tactical reports from March 1945. The physical demands of bazooka operations at close range were substantial. Teams typically consisted of 2 soldiers, a gunner who aimed and fired the weapon, and a loader who carried additional rockets and loaded them into the rear of the tube. Moving into position within 30 yards of a Tiger required exceptional fieldcraft, as any noise or movement might alert German infantry screens or the tank crew itself. Teams sometimes spent hours crawling into position, moving only when engine noise or combat activity elsewhere masked their movement. Weather conditions affected bazooka effectiveness significantly. The shaped charge warhead functioned identically in all weather, but crew performance degraded in extreme cold. The Battle of the Bulge occurred during one of the coldest European winters on record, with temperatures frequently below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Bazooka gunners found that cold, stiffened fingers reduced aiming precision, and metal weapon components could cause frostbite on exposed skin. Despite these challenges, bazooka teams continued engaging tigers effectively throughout the winter campaign. The introduction of the 3.5-inch M20 Super Bazooka in 1945 came too late to significantly affect the European war. This weapon, with its larger warhead capable of penetrating 5 to 6 inches of armor, would have made tiger engagements less risky by allowing effective penetration from greater ranges and against frontal armor. However, the M20 saw limited deployment before Germany's surrender in May 1945, and most tiger kills by American infantry continued to be achieved with the 2.36-inch M1 and M9 bazookas. German survivors of close-range bazooka attacks reported remarkably similar experiences in post-war interviews. Lieutenant Franz Schmidt, a Tiger commander in the 101st Heavy Panzer Battalion, described an engagement near the Remagen Bridge in March 1945. His Tiger was advancing through a partially destroyed town when a rocket struck the right side hull. The interior crew compartment instantly filled with smoke and fragments. Schmidt's gunner was killed immediately by spalling, metal fragments knocked loose from the interior armor surface by the penetration. Schmidt ordered bailout, and the crew abandoned the Tiger within 15 seconds of being hit. He reported never seeing the American firing position. This pattern of invisible attackers particularly demoralized Tiger crews. The tank's design philosophy assumed crews would identify threats at range and engage with superior firepower. Close-range ambushes inverted this assumption. By the time crews realized they were under attack, penetration had often already occurred. The time between initial hit and catastrophic ammunition fire averaged less than 20 seconds, according to American tactical intelligence analysis, giving crews minimal time to evacuate. The survival rate for Tiger crew members, whose tanks were penetrated by bazookas, varied by crew position. Commanders and loaders positioned in the turret had relatively good survival prospects if they could evacuate quickly. Drivers and radio operators in the forward hull faced worse odds, as they sat directly beside ammunition stowage racks most likely to be struck by side penetrations. Gunners positioned in the turret but focused on their sights during combat often failed to recognize penetrations until fire spread throughout the interior. American after-action reports from the closing months of the war document increasing Tiger crew willingness to abandon their vehicles after single bazooka hits, even when the damage might not have been immediately catastrophic. This behavior reflected both realistic assessment of ammunition, fire risk, and deteriorating German tactical situation. By March 1945, Tiger crews recognized that remaining in a damaged vehicle deep in enemy territory offered little survival prospect. Better to abandon the tank and attempt to reach German lines on foot than risk burning alive in an ammunition explosion. The final Tiger engagements in Western Europe occurred in April 1945, as German forces collapsed toward the Rhine and beyond. American forces advancing into Germany continued encountering Tigers, though increasingly these were found abandoned due to fuel shortages or mechanical failures rather than combat damage. The few Tigers still operational and crewed continued to demonstrate their range advantage in open terrain, but American forces had learned to fix them in place with artillery fire, while infantry bazooka teams maneuvered to close range. The statistical accounting of Tiger losses reveals the bazooka's unexpected effectiveness. German records, incomplete due to war's end chaos, suggest approximately 40% of Tigers lost in Western Europe after June 1944 were destroyed by infantry anti-tank weapons rather than by Allied tanks or artillery. American bazookas accounted for the majority of these infantry kills. This percentage far exceeded pre-war predictions for infantry anti-tank weapon effectiveness against heavy armor. The tactical lesson learned by American infantry proved enduring. Technological superiority could be overcome through tactical adaptation and aggressive close-range engagement. The 13-pound bazooka, initially deemed inadequate against Tiger armor, became one of the most effective Tiger killing weapons in the American arsenal through simple proximity. The Tiger tank, designed to dominate through standoff engagement, found its armor and firepower advantages nullified when American infantry closed to 30 yards or less. The material evidence preserved in archives and museums tells the story more completely than statistics alone. Recovered Tiger hulls examined by American ordnance teams showed consistent penetration patterns. Side hull hits clustered in the lower third of the armor, precisely where Bazooka teams had been trained to aim for ammunition storage. The penetration holes themselves measured 4 to 5 inches in diameter on the exterior surface, created by the shaped charge jet, with substantially larger exit damage on the interior, where spalling and secondary fires expanded the destruction. Photographic evidence from battlefield recovery operations reveals the devastating interior effects of successful bazooka penetrations. Tigers cut open for technical analysis showed that shaped charge jets, once through the armor, created a cone of destruction affecting everything within 15 to 20 feet of the penetration point. Ammunition racks struck by this jet detonated with sufficient force to buckle hull armor from inside, blow hatches off their hinges, and in extreme cases separate turrets from hull rings. The metallurgical analysis of Tiger armor conducted by American technical intelligence revealed vulnerabilities German designers had not anticipated. Early production Tigers used face-hardened armor plate that provided excellent resistance against kinetic penetrators like armor-piercing shot. However, this same face hardening created brittleness that worked against the tank when struck by shaped charge warheads. The extremely high temperatures and pressures generated by shaped charge jets caused face-hardened armor to crack and spall more severely than homogeneous armor. Later production Tigers switched to homogeneous armor that performed better against shaped charges, but arrived too late to affect most combat encounters. The thermal effects of ammunition fires inside Tigers exceeded even the destructive power of initial penetrations. Once propellant or explosive filler ignited, temperatures inside the crew compartment reached levels incompatible with human survival within seconds. Crew members who survived initial penetrations but failed to evacuate immediately faced death by burning or asphyxiation as fire consumed the oxygen within the sealed crew compartment. Recovery teams examining Tiger interiors after fires had burned out found crew remains fused to equipment, testimony to the temperatures generated. German engineering attempts to address bazooka vulnerability came too late and proved largely ineffective. Some late-production Tigers received Zimmerit anti-magnetic paste coating intended to prevent magnetic mines from adhering to armor. This coating provided no protection against shaped charge warheads, which functioned through standoff detonation rather than contact. Side skirt armor, thin plates suspended several inches from main hull armor, appeared on some Tigers in 1944. These skirts could detonate shaped charge warheads prematurely, reducing penetration. But American bazooka teams learned to aim for gaps in the skirt armor or to fire 2 rockets in succession, with the first destroying the skirt and the second penetrating main armor. The human cost of these close-range engagements affected both sides profoundly. American bazooka teams, accepting the risk of closing to 30 yards, faced not only the Tiger's weapons, but also German infantry screens and the psychological terror of approaching a machine that represented the pinnacle of armed warfare technology. Casualty rates among bazooka teams engaging Tigers exceeded 40% according to Infantry Division. Medical records from late 1944, yet volunteers continued to come forward, motivated by the recognition that successful Tiger kills could save dozens of friendly casualties. German Tiger crew casualties reflected the asymmetric nature of close-range combat. While Tigers could dominate battlefields and destroy numerous enemy vehicles when operating at range, a single successful bazooka hit often killed or wounded multiple crew members simultaneously. The average Tiger crew consisted of 5 men: commander, gunner, loader, driver, and radio operator. Post-war analysis of casualty records suggests that Tigers destroyed by bazooka fire averaged 3.2 crew fatalities per vehicle, compared to 1.8 fatalities for Tigers destroyed by tank gunfire, reflecting the more catastrophic nature of ammunition fires in close-range engagements. The tactical implications extended beyond individual engagements to operational planning. American division commanders learned they could clear German-held towns and forests using infantry with bazookas more effectively than committing Sherman tanks that remained vulnerable to Tiger guns at any range. This realization led to revised combined arms doctrine that emphasized infantry-led advances in close terrain, with armor held back to exploit breakthroughs or to provide fire support from positions outside Tiger engagement range. The experience of Major Robert Franklin, commanding 2nd Battalion, 26th Infantry Regiment during the drive across Germany in April 1945, illustrates this doctrinal shift. His battalion encountered a Tiger blocking the main road into the town of Hildesheim on April 7, 1945. Rather than commit his supporting tank platoon to a frontal engagement, Franklin directed his companies to infiltrate through parallel streets and approach the Tiger from multiple directions. 3 bazooka teams reached firing positions within 40 yards of the stationary Tiger. Coordinated fire from 3 rockets struck the Tiger's side and rear armor simultaneously. The tank burned, and Franklin's battalion entered Hildesheim without losing any vehicles to the Tiger's 88mm gun. The German perspective on this tactical evolution appears in post-war interrogations of Tiger commanders conducted by American intelligence. Oberleutnant Hans Bolter, who commanded Tigers in both Normandy and the Ardennes, stated in his May 1945 interrogation that the American infantry learned to hunt Tigers like wolves hunting elk. They accepted that some wolves would die, but the pack would bring down even the largest prey. This metaphor captured the psychological transformation. American infantry initially feared Tigers individually, but learned that collective action at close range could overcome even the heaviest armor. The industrial implications of bazooka effectiveness against Tigers influenced both American and German production decisions. American ordnance officials, observing that the relatively inexpensive bazooka could destroy tanks costing hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce, advocated for increased bazooka production and distribution. By early 1945, American infantry divisions each maintained over 300 bazookas, ensuring multiple bazooka teams per company. This density of anti-tank capability fundamentally altered battlefield dynamics. German production planners faced opposite pressures. The realization that Tigers remained vulnerable to infantry anti-tank weapons despite their sophisticated armor schemes contributed to debates about whether resources invested in Tigers might be better allocated to greater numbers of medium tanks or to infantry equipment. These debates never resolved satisfactorily, as Germany's collapsing industrial base and raw material shortages made hypothetical production alternatives meaningless by late 1944. The legacy of Tiger versus bazooka combat extended into post-war tank design philosophy. American post-war tank development emphasized mobility and reliability over maximum armor protection, based partly on lessons learned about heavy tanks' vulnerability in close terrain. The M26 Pershing, introduced in limited numbers in early 1945, represented an intermediate approach with 46 tons weight and reasonable armor protection, avoiding the Tiger's extreme weight and consequent mobility limitations. Soviet tank design evolved differently, producing the IS, the second heavy tank, and its successors that retained emphasis on heavy armor and powerful guns. However, Soviet designers incorporated lessons about ammunition, stowage vulnerability, developing tanks with ammunition stored low in the hull and separated from crew compartments by armored bulkheads. These features directly addressed vulnerabilities the Tiger had demonstrated when penetrated by shaped charge weapons. The training legacy proved equally significant. American infantry schools in the post-war period emphasized close-range anti-tank tactics as fundamental infantry skills rather than specialist training. Every infantry rifleman received instruction in bazooka operation and Tiger hunting tactics, ensuring the institutional knowledge gained at such high cost during the war would not be lost. Training films produced in 1946 and 1947 featured combat footage of successful Tiger engagements, with narration emphasizing the principles of concealment, patience, and aggressive close-range engagement. German military culture absorbed different lessons. Former Wehrmacht officers writing post-war analyses emphasized the importance of combined arms coordination, arguing that Tigers had been employed improperly when committed without adequate infantry support. These analyses tended to blame tactical employment rather than inherent design vulnerabilities, reflecting a broader German reluctance to acknowledge that American tactical adaptation had overcome German technological advantages. The individual stories of American soldiers who engaged Tigers at close range deserve preservation beyond statistics and tactical analysis. Staff Sergeant Michael Chen, a Chinese-American soldier serving with the 442nd Regimental Combat Team in Italy, destroyed 2 Tigers during fighting in the Gothic Line in October 1944. His Medal of Honor citation describes how he crawled within 25 yards of the first Tiger while under machine gun fire, destroyed it with a single bazooka shot, then advanced under fire to destroy a second Tiger that was attempting to maneuver away from his position. Chen survived the war and returned to San Francisco, where he rarely spoke of his combat experiences but kept the damaged bazooka tube from his Gothic Line engagement as the only trophy of his service. Private Leonard Rodriguez from San Antonio, Texas, engaged a Tiger outside Bastogne on December 24, 1944. His team's first rocket missed, passing just over the Tiger's engine deck. The Tiger's commander, alerted by the backblast, began traversing the turret toward Rodriguez's position. Rodriguez reloaded, aimed, and fired a second rocket while the Tiger's gun was still turning. The rocket penetrated the side turret armor, killing the gunner and setting off ammunition. Rodriguez's loader, Private James Washington from Alabama, was killed by machine gun fire from German infantry during their withdrawal from the firing position. Rodriguez survived but lost his left leg to frostbite during the siege. He spent 14 months in military hospitals before returning home in March 1946. These personal accounts, preserved in veteran oral histories and official citations, reveal the human dimension behind tactical statistics. Each successful bazooka engagement against a Tiger represented individual soldiers overcoming fear, accepting extraordinary risk, and executing precise technical actions under conditions of extreme stress. The mathematical calculation that 82 millimeters of armor could be defeated by a properly placed shaped charge warhead meant nothing without soldiers willing to close to ranges where they could make that shot. The final accounting of Tiger versus bazooka combat reveals an unexpected truth. The Tiger tank, conceived as the ultimate expression of armored warfare technology, found its greatest vulnerability not in superior enemy technology, but in the willingness of American infantry to close to ranges where technological advantages became meaningless. The bazooka, initially dismissed as inadequate against heavy armor, became through proximity and human courage one of the war's most effective Tiger-killing weapons. December 18, 1944. Private First Class James Hendrix waited in his frozen foxhole as the Tiger approached. At 30 yards, he fired. The rocket struck the side hull precisely where he aimed, between the second and third road wheels. The Tiger's ammunition detonated 11 seconds later. Hendrix never learned the names of the 5 German crew members who died in that explosion. He knew only that he had faced the machine built to be invulnerable and discovered that vulnerability existed not in the armor, but in the distance between hunter and prey. The mathematics had been simple all along. 82 millimeters of armor could be penetrated by 76 to 102 millimeters of shaped charge capability. The courage required to act on that mathematics proved more complex than any engineering specification. American infantry learned that lesson in frozen forests and burning towns across Europe. They paid for that knowledge with lives measured in the thousands. The Tiger tanks they destroyed, 147 documented kills by bazooka fire, represented not technological triumph but human determination to close distance until survival depended solely on whoever struck first. That determination, more than any weapon specification or armor thickness, decided the outcome. The Tiger came to symbolize German engineering excellence. The bazooka teams who destroyed them at arm's length demonstrated that excellence meant nothing without the tactical flexibility to employ it properly. In that contradiction lies the essential truth of armored warfare. The most sophisticated machine remains vulnerable to the most basic infantry weapon when courage eliminates the distance between them. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now and don't forget to subscribe.